you. By the way, give blood whenever you can. It's a noble thing to do, it's the right thing to do, and you may need some blood one day yourself, and you shouldn't be ashamed of the fact that this comes from human solidarity, without which we wouldn't be here in the first place or able to have a language to discuss this in. But all right, think of my Jewish ancestors, such as they were, hobbling around in the desert. I don't believe a word of the story. Even Israeli archaeology has completely and conclusively disproved the story of Exodus, as is detailed at some length in my book. There was no such presence in Egypt. There was no exile. There was no wandering. There was a lot of massacre and murder and theft, but then there always is when religious tribes are walking around. Let's assume the story is true. Let's assume it. Am I to be insulted by being told that my ancestors did not know until they got to Sinai that perjury and murder and theft were not kosher? Up till then they thought, those are the things we like best. It's a bit of a facer to get all this way and then to have someone tell us that's not on anymore. No. No, we all have to, I'll repeat myself, we all have to have more self-respect than that. They wouldn't have got that far or anywhere. They would never have been written about or heard of if they'd been under any other impression. Religion gets its morality from us. We know innately. You don't have to teach a child the golden rule. You sometimes have to reinforce it a bit, but you don't have to teach the principles of it. Same with the New Testament. How do we know this? Because the story of the Good Samaritan is told by the alleged Nazarene, in whose existence I also do not believe. But he talks of a person who went out of his way on the road from Jerusalem to Jericho to help a fellow creature in need. Very obviously, this man cannot have been a Christian, because it's the young Jesus talking about him. He knows the story already. He's able to tell people that's the way you should behave if you see people in trouble. He never says you need divine permission to do this or a divine warrant to do it. It's ordinary human ethics. And to say that it wouldn't be part of us, part of our warp and our weft and our woof, if it wasn't for divine permission, is to make ourselves into serfs. So I propose we repudiate that and, as it were, stand on our own 2 feet a bit more. Now, speaking of serfdom, well, Mr. Hitchens, isn't it the case that in the last century some of the worst atrocities, if not the worst of all, were perpetrated by atheists and secularists? Is this not the fact? Very serious question. I have a whole chapter about it in my book. Shall I read it all to you? No, I won't do that. It's available at fine bookstores everywhere. And will be available after. I'll be very polite to anyone who has a receipt, but not to anyone else. Someone asked me the other day, are you a materialist? I said, are you joking? Yes. He said, this is America. Well, take the cases that are before us, the most notorious ones. In the case of fascism, the movement that coined the term totalitarianism, that actually put it into circulation, religion being, in my view, implicitly totalitarian with its admiration of an absolute, unchallengeable ruler, there's no other way to describe the fascist movement beginning in Spain, Portugal, Italy, spreading through Croatia, Austria, large parts of Germany, Hungary, Slovakia, except to say it was a movement of the Roman Catholic Rite. That's what it was. It was a completely Christian movement. All of its leaders were believing Christians. It had an official concordat with the Vatican. The Nazi puppet state leader of Slovakia was actually a man in holy orders. General Franco was very nearly baptized in his rule. But anyone can look this up. The church has never ceased to apologize for it, and nor should. It was over. They helped many of these people escape and begin constructing regimes of a similar model in South America after 1945. No wonder they can't stop apologizing. Nothing secular about that. German National Socialism, not quite the same, I have to say. It's true that the Vatican signed a treaty with Hitler the week he was installed in power. And it was for him the first and most important treaty he ever signed, the Concordat with the Vatican, and neither of them ever broke it. It's also true to say that in Mein Kampf he praises the Catholic Church and never left it, and has nothing but contempt for atheism. It's also true that the Pope ordered that his birthday, the Führer's birthday, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, be celebrated from the pulpit every year, every April. which it was, to the very end. It's also true that 25% of the members of the SS, this we know from Catholic historians, were confessing Catholics, ones who went to confession, and that no one was ever threatened with excommunication for their role in the Endlösung, as the Germans call the Shoah, or the final solution. The excommunication was only used by the Church politically after the war, when you were told you'd be excommunicated if you voted for the Communist Party. And it is true that Joseph Goebbels was excommunicated from the Catholic Church. But do you want to know why? Do you know why? He's married a Protestant. Yeah. He's married a Protestant. That's what it took to be. Next, you'll know he didn't eat fish on a Friday or something. No, excuse me, they have their standards, okay? But it is also true that Hitler sought to replace Christianity as the state religion and would have preferred an Aryan Nordic blood myth with himself as the centerpiece of it. There's no question about that. And that many brave Christians had to die on that proposition. No one can deny that. But there's nothing secular about National Socialism. And of the third partner in that revolting alliance, that of Japan, the leader is not just a man of God, but a God himself, for whom people were prepared to immolate themselves and others. The late Emperor Hirohito. While I'm at it, when his son was sent to Oxford University, this is a digression, but why not? He was sent to Magdalen College in the 30s, and the Japanese embassy sent up a team of people to see the warden of Magdalen College, Oxford, to say, are you sure you're ready to receive the Crown Prince? They said, yeah, absolutely, we're ready. He's got a nice room. We have a good tutor. Apparently his English is very good. We're looking forward very much to having him at the Japanese embassy. Well, it's just we want to be sure you understand. You're calling him Crown Prince, of course that is his title, but you do realize that his father in our country is not thought of just as an emperor, but as God. Do you understand that? The warden of Magdalen College said, I think you'll find we're quite used to having the sons of famous people at Oxford. Anyway, don't know what brought that on. Don't know quite what made me go to that direction. Anyway, there's nothing secular about an empire whose military ideology, by the way, was that of Zen Buddhism, for those of you who think the Eastern path is more contemplative. Its official ideology, as with the dictatorship in Burma today, is Zen Buddhism. There's nothing secular about that. So I think that clears up this frequently asked question on that side of the ledger. Moving, still answering my own, not my own question, the other person's question. Moving to Russia, until 1917, the year of the revolution, millions and millions of Russians have been told for hundreds and hundreds of years that the head of their state was also a man of God, was the head of the church, was not quite human, a bit better than human, not quite divine either. The Tsar was the head of the Russian Orthodox Church. He was the little father. As well as owning everyone in the country as an absolute dictator, he was the spiritual leader of the church. That's how millions of Russians have been reduced to credulity, stupidity, servility, and fear. Thus the state of affairs. If you were Joseph Stalin, who'd studied for many years in a seminary to become a priest, and would have made a very good bishop if he'd stuck at it, if you do not realize what an opportunity you've just been given with this vast reservoir, then you shouldn't be in the dictatorship business. Immediately, an inquisition is set up. Heresy hunts begin. Trials of heretics are put on. Miracles are announced. Lysenko's biology will produce giant tomatoes and 4 harvests a year. Everything is to be expected from the leader. All praise is due to him. All thanks are required of you for him. It's not very difficult to see what the analogy is there, and I won't bore you with what happens in China, and I've already told you about North Korea. It's a simulacrum of, a borrowing of, and an inheritance from the willingness of people to take things on faith. Nothing, in my view, secular about that. To my questioner I reply, sir, or as it might be, ma'am, show me, if you will, a society that has adopted the teachings of Lucretius, Epicurus, Galileo. I'm talking of our great tradition of reason, skepticism, science, culture, religion, and irreligion. Galileo, Spinoza,